Reason, logic, interrogation, critical thinking, these are all key skills that are going to have to be amplified. Otherwise, you'll be sedated with the information that it's giving you answers on. And I think like sometimes you do just want a quick answer. And sometimes you also want to ask more of an expansive question.
I've seen an increase in people, number one, saying words that they don't understand.
Mm.
And then also, if you don't actually know the answer you're looking for, you're not an expert. It's like, how do you know if it is hallucinating? And then if you give that to a client, because you actually don't know about their industry, and you're just giving them like hallucinated information, then you're in trouble as well.
I was kind of thinking about prompt engineering as a job, and I just thought that was going to be fly by night because it's really not about the prompt, it's about the context.
It's much better just to take that time up front, really trying to understand the problem, understand the context, the environment, all the elements that you went in, instead of getting the output and then going back and doing it.
Joel Lalgee and Marcus Sawyer welcome you to AI in Recruiting, the show where they break down how AI is transforming hiring, leadership, and the future of work. Expect real talk, smart tools, and bold conversations with the people shaping what's next. Let's get into it.
Welcome to AI in Recruiting. I'm your host, Joel Lalgee. I am here, as always, with the one, the only, the guy that's been talking about AI longer than most of us have been alive, Marcus Sawyer. Welcome, Marcus.
Joel, how you doing? Great to see you, great to connect with you, and looking forward to our discussion.
Yeah, it's been, well, a couple weeks, maybe
Yeah.
almost a month since we've connected. So everything good? Lots of new developments in your business. What's the latest?
What's the latest? So, look, everything's moving at a rapid pace. I think we've been spending a lot of time internally reorganizing and restructuring. And I'll talk a little bit about organizational structure today for an AI first or an AI enabled company. I saw a really interesting piece of research that I'll dive into. We've just been doing that and speaking to customers, really trying to figure
Amazing.
out exactly where we can help them to add the most value. So it's been, yeah, it's been exciting, learning a lot, having a lot of conversations, knowing that people are still wanting to do things with AI as far as productivity, efficiency, cost, but still not 100% fully in production, right? So I think we're still in this great restructuring phase, as we call it.
I've been thinking about something. Is the hype cycle of AI, do you think we're coming to an end of a hype cycle and now more people are getting to a point where they're like, all right, I'm sold, need to work on AI, need to figure out how to use it. And now we're entering a cycle of how are we actually doing this and how are we measuring productivity?
Yeah, I think that I thought 2025 was going to be the year of AI ROI.
Mm,
But I think we might see that. We may see it in Q4, but I think we'll definitely see it next year, 2026. And yes, there is like the hype cycle. The thing about hype cycles, right, is once you talk about something so much, it then becomes annoying to people. And I think that AI, generally, that term is annoying, but it's something you can't look away from.
yeah.
And so the depth of the conversations are evolving. And we were just talking about this offline, and it's like, I did say this at the start. I was kind of thinking about prompt engineering as a job, and I just thought that was going to be fly by night because it's really not about the prompt, it's about the context. And I'd noticed that the Shopify CEO had mentioned something about context engineering. He put it much better than I would have at that point. But that's really what it's about at this point. Do you have the right context, both from the standpoint of what you're trying to get done and the environment that you're operating in? So the context is absolutely key. And so I think if you're using AI in the right context, it can't be boring because it's helping you. And it can't be hype because it's helping you. But if you don't understand the context and the use case, that's kind of like where we're getting to where it's a little bit challenging. Like what are you seeing on social media and what are you hearing?
I mean, I definitely hear a lot of what I would consider like AI fatigue. So
Yeah.
one of the biggest critiques I think of conferences and different places we go is not something else on AI. So I think there's like definitely that fatigue with it. But I still, to your point, think that I don't know if we're all the way, all everyone's at the point where they know even the problems as well. I still think we're still figuring out like what are the problems that we need to solve, and I think people are looking for guidance for that.
Sure.
But there is part of it where each business is going to be unique. There's going to be similarities, but each business is unique. Each process and workflow is going to be unique. So there is that looking at your own processes, looking at your own workflows, and trying to understand what your problems are. And I think there are some people who it seems like, or they'll say, "Yep, I figured that out. I'm running with it. I'm way more productive."
Yeah.
But there still are a lot of people where when I start to dig and say, "Well, tell me about this," or "How are you using it?" it turns more into point solutions versus problems that are solved, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's so like I think if you want to solve a quote unquote problem, that means that you're operating in an existing system. So maybe that's also hard from a terminology standpoint for people to fathom because if you know you have a problem that is related to something that is historical, it's happened before. If you're
Mm.
creating a brand new system, you get into the area of originality. And the challenge also with AI at the moment is people are getting a lot of their ideas from the AI. So there's a lot of parroting going on,
I've heard that a
right?
lot actually recently.
Yeah, so you're seeing a lot of the same ideas within social. So sometimes, like taking a step back, reflecting, coming away from the screen, going outside, meeting and speaking with people.
Yeah.
I'll give you a contrast of like three different people I've spoken to, all CEOs. And there's two CEOs that have businesses that do moderately well, right? One of the CEOs like, look, I do like this AI stuff. I'm trying to think through the stuff to do, but I just want something that looks good. That's what they said. I was like, okay, look, but what's the problem that you're trying to solve? Another CEO, we had an in-depth discussion. They're trying to figure out like, what can this do? How can it work? And then they said to us, they'd followed up and said, mm, we actually think that we may take somebody that wants to work for us for free for a few months to see how far that gets us. Now, I spoke to another CEO and he's got a HR background, but he's moving into building a new company. And he'd come prepared with a full end-to-end flow diagram of every single problem and every single challenge in his business. And
Mm.
he had said, these are where all the bottlenecks are, where all the challenges are. And he had the entire workflow. We're going to partner with them to help them basically remove all of those bottlenecks and reimagine the
Mm.
system. But he knew what he was trying to do. And that was just a completely different conversation. And we've had a few of those already where we've got one right now where we're helping them set up a staffing firm like AI first. So they get the contractors, we provide the technology, it's AI first. We've got another one at the moment, just wants leads. They know exactly what market segment they're in. They know exactly what type of leads they're in, and they want them delivered to them five a day, every day. We get the AI agents
I love that.
delivering them leads.
I love that.
These use cases, like these types of companies, we love working with them because they've spent the time to think through it. And I worry about those that think things are going to get done in the same way and are not prepared to break the system
Yeah.
because there's a
Well, it seems
paradigm
like the
shift
difference
opportunity.
between, well, and it seems like the difference between that thinking is, hey, show me a demo and show me something
Yeah,
compared to, hey, here's the business, here's what we're working on. We spent 10 hours doing this. Can you build me something that can save me the 10 hours on that? And you're
amazing.
like, yeah, I can build that versus, yeah,
And
show me the cool tool and demo. Let me do a demo. And you're like, oh, I think I have that problem. It's like
yeah,
you
it's not
being
really
a,
it's not really a problem, and it's also like yeah, you show that AI's demo really well, and even some
yeah,
of ours like being super transparent haven't demoed so well.
yeah.
But it's not about the demo, it's about the output that it's going to
Mm.
provide and how it fits into your workflow. So some of the other things we've started doing is integrating with some of the ATS systems, but some specific ones where it's like, hey, like I want to press a button and I want these candidates that are relevant, interested, and verified I want them to show up in our system at this particular point in time. Now, it will feel like magic, but we know and they know we work together on what that flow is. And it's almost like when you turn on a tap and whatever liquid you decide of choice appears. Sometimes it's water, sometimes it's alcohol, sometimes it's whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But you've got to make sure that what you're putting into the tap is what you want to come out of the other end, and you understand
Yeah.
that refinery process. And so all we're doing is building better pipes to get the outcome.
That's awesome.
That's where we're spending our time.
Yeah, and I think that's the it's kind of like going back to that whole idea of this is where I think the difference between people who have sat back and waited and then people who have been proactive, I think we're going to start to just continue. Well, we're going to start to see more and more of a divide between people as well, which is, it's a little bit of a
Yeah.
scary thing, right? But it
Yeah.
also means that there's actually still time, um, but it's that first step is always looking at yourself. And I just think like the first place I would look personally would be just look at your calendar and look at like where are you actually spending time and just look at like where am I spending time? What am I spending time doing? And just look at the activities and look at how you're spending your day. And I mean, that's personally what I would do. Like I spend an hour every single day looking up XYZ person so I can reach out to them and I try and send 20 to 25 messages. If I tell you that in a meeting, I know you're going to say, hey, my agent can do that for you. Uh,
Yeah. And look, I think at
you
a
know,
company level, it's about looking at the calendars of your team, right?
Hmm.
So if we're talking to a lot of leaders who listen into the show, and it's like if you've got 100 people and everybody's spending an hour on that task a day, that's 100 hours. If you look at that 100 hours, and it's like, well, what do you pay that person average for 100 hours work, right?
Yeah,
Let's say even if it's $50, whatever the number is, right? There's five K. If you times that 5K by 5 days a week, it's 25K a week that people are spending on that task. Then it's 100K a month, and then that's 1.2 million. So is it worth you trying to save 50% of that time? Absolutely.
yeah,
And so I think a lot of internal audits need to be done at scale. And you do that. We just done that math on 100. If you do that math on 1,000, it will extrapolate out again, right? Same kind of thing. But then you're not talking about 1.2 million. You're talking more like 12 million, right? And then when you get to 10,000, so these bigger companies are actually really starting to see productivity and efficiency gains where they can empower people to leverage AI in the right points in time. I was looking at some research recently from a company called Iconic, and they had recently done a study from April 2025. It's perspectives from Iconic Gen AI survey, and it had a network of AI leaders who are consisting of a community of CIOs, CDOs, and they're overseeing AI initiatives. And the top consideration when choosing a foundation model today, 74% at the moment, is accuracy. And then the second one has been cost. Um, 74% say accuracy. Now, if you can get that accuracy right with the models, it can save you a lot of time. If it's inaccurate, that's where you get in the hallucinations, and it'll have a big challenge moving forward, the downstream in terms of where you're spending your time. So the accuracy of the models is also something that I think is really important and time saver. That's why Google was better than Yahoo, right? We remember Yahoo like it's better than Yahoo because
what
it
about
was
Ask Jeeves though? Ask Jeeves
yeah,
was amazing.
Ask Jeeves was good, AOL, right? But Google won because it was providing you more relevant results in a short space of time.
Yeah, yeah. Which now obviously, everyone's noticed that shift where you search and Gemini gives you the answer, and that they had that whole meme circling around, right? Of like, what are people in the future going to think that we searched and then tried to figure out which website had the best answer? Like, no, we just want the answer. But the danger with that, and I think you talked about this a long, long time ago, is that is actually the value of being a subject matter expert because you still need to know, is the calculator giving me an answer that's just wrong? Like 7 times 40 is not 10,000. But if you actually don't know anything, then you think that that 10, maybe you keyed something in wrong or you used a word you didn't understand. And that's where that true subject matter expertise is just still so valuable. Because I don't think a lot of people, I've seen this on LinkedIn, and I've also seen it in just personal life with people who are using AI outside of work. I think you talked about this a while ago. I've seen an increase in people, number one, saying words that they don't understand.
Hmm.
And then also, it's like, well, if you don't actually know the answer you're looking for, you're not an expert. It's like, how do you know if it is hallucinating? And then if you give that to a client, because you actually don't know about their industry, and you just giving them like hallucinated information, then you're in trouble as well.
Well, I think I don't disagree with that, and I think that you're right on one side, but the other side, which is this is excuse the oxymoron here, is critical thinking. And so it's being able to see one thing on one hand and one thing on another hand. And even if you don't have the domain expertise, you can actually get to the answer through first principles. So I think about this with my family. What you teach your kids is not necessarily domain expertise, but it's how to get to the right answer.
Yeah.
And if you know that, like sometimes I'll say, if you say the sky is pink, if you're blind and you can't see, you could you may be able to agree with that, right? But if you know better, or you're able to ask why, or maybe you haven't seen before, why
Hmm.
is it that color? What is a color? How do we get to that point? And so
Yeah,
I
it's like
think that
reason and logic almost.
yeah,
Reasoning.
reason, logic, interrogation, critical thinking, these are all key skills that are gonna have to be amplified. Otherwise, you'll be sedated with the information that giving you answers on. And I think like sometimes you do just want a quick answer, and sometimes you also want to ask more of an expansive question. You don't necessarily want the answer that the machine, i.e., Google, previously could interpret. So you might have to ask a question I might want to ask a question, something like, hey, I'm going away for 4th of July weekend. What are some of the good spots that you'd recommend to go to? I've got a small family. We want to spend some time outside and want to spend some time inside. What do you think? That would be a crazy question to ask probably like a year ago or two, right? Maybe 3 years ago. Like, how
Yeah.
would you even get to that? But now that seems pretty logical that you'd ask an
Hmm.
AI for an itinerary or plan. Um, I went away with a family recently, and we were trying to plan out an itinerary on places to go, restaurants to go to, things to do. I was able to ask the AR, and it could come up based on what I was trying to get done, right? Like I wanted something that was not too high, but kind of cool. I wanted something that had the ability for us to try a variety of different things. I wanted us to be able to be close into a certain area. And I didn't tell you, you might know this. I used to run a concierge business years ago, right? And we used to plan itineraries. We would have to spend a lot of time thinking about
In
itineraries.
Vegas.
Yeah, Vegas, right? We send a lot of people to
Yeah.
Vegas. And we spend a lot of time planning that itinerary. And some people will know, but you can, if the AI understands you, it can provide you with better recommendations, but you've got to be able to ask the right questions.
It's huge. But I don't think, I wonder how many people are just inputting and then just taking whatever it spits out and go, yep.
Well, people
And
done it with Google for a long time, right?
sure.
Where they would get answers, and then you people even do it with books because in a book it doesn't mean it's true,
Yeah.
right? Like because it's a published author, so oh yeah, it was in that book. But did you check the other book and then the other one to see if there were any contradictions? So
Uh,
somebody had told me this before, a philosopher who I know is in family, he said like one of the powers that you need to accumulate and what dictates whether or not one is smart or not is the ability to spot contradictions.
hmm.
And I've lived with that for a long period of time to like think about like how do you spot a contradiction in what someone's saying, what they're doing, based on how someone acts, based on what they say, based on what that information. And if it doesn't line up, it doesn't make sense.
Hmm.
So
It's
anyway,
good. No, it's good. I was gonna see. I noticed something recent. I have noticed recently more people are talking about like chat. This is more with Chat GPT as like the LLM that people are using for the example, but it's talking about how it's kind of becoming more of like an echo chamber and kind of being really nice. And I saw an example recently where all my friends on Facebook, because for some reason I got into Facebook again recently, but they were all like, ChatGPT, create me an image based on what you know about me.
Yeah.
And it was like creating these like really like one was a mom of three kids, right? They're under five. So as a dad with three kids under five, I know that it's craziness. Okay. It's just an insane life. And it's like these generating these pictures though of like really happy, like everything's perfect, like really rosy colored images of like what their lives look like. And it just started getting me thinking, like, is the idea of some of these models just to keep you prompting and like to kind of make you feel good while you're doing it? So they're just getting information as part of their business model. Like, what's your thought with that? Because it just kind of reminds me of like Facebook, right? Like it's just an algorithm that's just giving you what you're interested in to keep you on the platform.
Well, historically, a lot of news outlets and social media have used a tactic to keep people engaged by not showing them things that they like, but showing them shock and horror.
Hmm.
So that is
Yeah.
actually the news tactic.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Now, that's when you're in multiplayer mode because you're going to talk to somebody else about that shock or horror. You got something interesting. When you're in a solitude mode, meaning it's you and the AI, positive reinforcement is part of the programming to allow you to continue to go down a particular track. And so it's certainly built into the DNA of these models, and it's certainly a strategic tactic in terms of how it operates. But if you understand that, you're less shocked by the output. And I would say for that instance that you'd provided as far as the imaging, if somebody had shown that particular person or the AI model had shown that person maybe a negative image that was way off, their affiliation with that model might feel a bit more negative.
Hmm.
So it's not in the interest of the models to do that. That's
So what? So
firstly.
how would you advise people then to view those? Do you have to kind of view it with like a grain of salt then, or like what is your thought around that?
I'd advise people not to use AI for things like that. Because what are you trying to actually do? I would advise people to use AI to help you move along with areas that are important for you to get done, right? Like in the real world.
Yeah.
I think you can always spot faults in things. You could like as you talked about with a calculator can only calculate to a certain degree. We could say it's right, and this might get a little bit deeper than it should, but we could say it's right. But that arbitrary calculation has come up because we all have an agreed system on mathematics.
Yeah.
Now, mathematics have proven to be a robust system until disproven in some areas. But the definition, and you might have heard this before, is like the definition of, I think it's a foot. It's never going to be bang on a foot or never going to be bang over a foot, right? It's like, it's arbitrary, but it's close enough to the militude for us to agree upon to then base mathematics on it. And that's good enough. And I think these
Yeah.
models are close enough and good enough to help you write a follow-up email to save you some time. So I think that there's so much that these models can do. And I heard someone say that the other day that we're not even using them for that bit yet. And you could probably build, like, if the models just stop today, there's millions of businesses that don't exist that could be created off the quality of the models as they are today. They're good enough to do that.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean you should use them for everything. And that comes through critical thinking, right? Like if you want some like if you want to figure out like what you look like as a kid of three, why don't you just take a picture? Like
Yeah.
that's like the best reflection of you. Like that's technology. take a
Yeah, and I
picture.
think people are just they're just curious, right, with that. But I
Yeah.
think there's more stretching out to like, huh, if it's doing that, then what happens if I want to have a conversation with my CEO and I'm like, all right, tell me how I should approach this conversation with the CEO, but then it almost like is a rosy conversation. I don't know. I guess I'm just playing it out
But
in
but
terms
but
of
but
like
if it does that, it goes back to critical thinking.
totally,
And then it
exactly.
goes back from what we were talking about earlier, from prompt engineering to context engineering.
Mm,
So if I say, tell me how I should approach this conversation with my CEO, what the good models will do is say, what is the situation? And then give a little bit more context. But the type of prompt that I would probably put in is I would say that I've been in my organization for the last 5 years. I'm thinking about moving up, but I haven't necessarily hit my targets in the last few months. What would be a strategic way that I could position myself to make sure that I'm in pole position to be in the next level of promotions? Could you give me some steps and some guidance? That could include, but is not limited to me having a conversation directly with my CEO, or do you suggest that I speak with my line manager? That's the type of prompt I would personally put in just off the top of the head.
yeah, I love that.
A- And so and I think people have that ability to think through the depth of the questions now because they've created more time from the output. So you can get a better output if you spend more time on the questions, which goes back to what we were talking about originally is what problem are you trying to solve? So the
Yeah,
guy that's gone through all these problems and all these areas and spent that time and figured it out is going to get a much better output than those that think it's a one and done.
yeah, it's huge. I love that. But and that's I think that's the danger, right? Is like not the danger, but that the default for a lot of people I think can be quick, hurried. I'm just gonna prompt something because I just want the content.
And
But like you said,
that works as well, right? Like I'll give another example. We
yeah,
were in a store and I was looking at some items and I wanted to know what they all were and what the ingredients were. It was like a new kind of like food health store. And like some of these things have got like, all this package in, you don't understand it. We were out in LA. And so while I was on the move, I created an app which is easy to do. And it was with one of the models. I said the app was simply, hey, I'm in a store. There are all of these different areas or different food types. I'm trying to figure out what the pros and cons are in each food. If I tell you the name of a food type, will you be able to give me a pros and cons and tell me how I should think about this if I just put in the name? If you agree with me, say got it. Say got it. I then started putting stuff in. So I was walking around the store, putting stuff in. And I was getting pros and cons on each of these areas and doing comparisons. Now, I had to spend a lot longer on the initial context because it wasn't actually a prompt. This is where I talk about context engineering. It was a prompt, but it was context of the
yeah,
environment. What
yeah.
that allowed me to do was go much faster later because then I could start putting more and more stuff in it. And I knew it would give me a half decent answer.
I love that. You have to now my mind is just running of all the situations I could start to do this in. But that I
Yeah.
get that's what I'm saying though is like sometimes there can be a rush for an output that you forget to put in the context, and then so if you forget to put the context in initially, then you're having to you have to re-enter and re-refine. So it's much better just to take that time up front, really and trying to understand the problem, understand the context, the environment, all the elements that you went in, and instead of getting the output and then going back and doing it. But I think sometimes what happens, for example, I'll use an obvious one for me would be people want to post a piece of content. They'll just say, write me write me a blog, write me a LinkedIn post. They're not giving any context, and then the output that it comes out with is generic because you haven't put that effort into actually creating the context for it.
Absolutely. And we do it with jobs at the moment. So we've got an AI agent that we built and it has a baseline level of understanding, like a general LLM. We give it an understanding of how to screen that's based on our experience and what we know. We then give it a job, which is the context. And then we give it a way to screen for that specific job. And it's not a necessarily a judgment call. It might be a factual screen or it might be a skills-based screen. you give the model all of this context in real time. So we do it in real time. So every time that somebody clicks a link for a specific job, it changes the context for the model. So as soon as somebody applies or says that they're willing to apply, it will change the context for the model. And then it can give that you a very specific screen for that particular job. That's super powerful because it understands what that person is talking about,
Yeah.
right? And that it gives you a head start, right? And that's why when you get into a meeting, if you do your research before the meeting generally tends to go a lot smoother because you know something about them or they know something about you, or if you've had a second meeting because you know that person.
Yeah.
That's what you want to do. You want to kind of get to that second meeting point with AI.
Yeah. I love that. I love it. What
I was
about
looking,
this? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just looking at uh, some of the updates more recently around AI development spend and where that's coming from at the moment. And a lot of companies. This was a survey I was looking at. Same one from Iconic. It was a great paper. Maybe we can put that in as a follow up. A lot of the companies, on average, are allocating 10 to 20% of their R&D budget to AI development, with most companies planning to increase that spend. Now, within that, 57% of that is for AI salaries, hiring, and upskilling. So 3% other related costs. And that's what they're doing at pre-launch. So 57% of salaries at pre-launch before you've launched a product. Then it goes to 38% in beta. Then which is after kind of pre-launch. And then you've got general access, it's 40% for salaries, and then 36% at scaling. So the cost of salary starts to go down, but the point is it's still the biggest chunk.
Mm.
As products scale, the cost of talent tends to go down as a total proportion of spend. But conversely, the overall spend goes up because you're spending more on compute. So you actually spend more on salaries overall as time goes on. I thought it was a really interesting piece.
That is, it's a little bit, that is a little bit of a, almost like a contradiction to what I think most people would think. So, like, what, in the short term, obviously, you cut a bunch of people, you save money, right? In the short, in like the next quarter or whatever on profit. So, like, how do you approach that then? Or, like, what advice would you have for leaders even just to think about
Yeah.
that, considering there's such a push right now for like increased efficiencies, get more done. You hear get more done with less, but
So it's three categories: salaries,
yeah.
hiring, and upskilling, but for AI talent.
Okay. So
Okay.
this is for,
So
okay.
so just for AI talent. So what could you do? You could upskill those that don't have the AI capabilities, and there's all these different types of jobs, and I'll talk about some of the job types within AI that might be useful to kind of learn more about as I was looking through this report. But you could start to convert people into these roles where they can use their current talents for AI talents, right? The top use case for productivity today at 65% is coding assistance. So like the software engineers are actually the ones that are going to kind of go down. And the second one is content generation and writing assistants at 37%,
What about video
right?
content creators? I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But I think that and as I said, like the jobs that have been created by computers are going to be the first jobs that are going to be reinvented, should we
Hmm.
say.
I like
Um
that. I like that word, reinvented.
yeah. And and let me see if I can just get to some of the more specific types of costs. So most companies currently have dedicated ML and AI engineers. So they've got data scientists, product managers, and AI engineers. 88% are planning to hire AI and ML engineers continuously. But there are a few other areas within AI which are they currently have or planning to hire data scientists, another key area. So thinking about that with your company or internally, if you're internally recruiting or you're going externally, AI product managers, 54%, data architects, 38%, data visualization is down at 22, and then prompt engineers is at 20% of what people are planning to hire, and then AI design specialists at 17%. So
Hmm.
the biggest bottleneck across all the respondents, there was relatively an even split. and sentiments towards the pace of hiring. Those who felt like they were not hiring fast enough, primarily citing a lack of qualified candidates because these candidates don't exist. So 54% said they're not hiring fast enough in that area. So where you're seeing a dip in some areas, you're seeing a huge increase of people not being able to hire fast enough within the AI space.
So you don't have the experience. So what are your thoughts around like, or does it say the skills that people are looking for? Like what if people aren't qualified, what are the skills people are looking for? Or like how do you identify who you can upskill in your organization?
Yeah, look, I mean, let's try and we can do a quick translation and we could use the AI to do that. But like the AI and ML engineers typically are software engineers that might be in different areas. Data scientists could be statisticians, they could be finance people. AI product managers are product managers, people who've developed, created a product, brought it to market. Data architects are those that have started to put together workflows of how the data flows in and out. So these are some transfer, they could be project managers. And so maybe you have these skills, but not in AI, and no one really does. So the point is, can you look at transferable skills,
Yeah.
right? And bring those in. And then also, what are the tools that people are using in order to drive those skills? We should, I don't know if it makes sense now to switch gears slightly.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, and we could start to look at some of the latest newsletters that we had produced that might be interesting and give people an idea on where things are going. If what do you think about that, Joel?
Yeah, I love that. The,
Do you want to get going, or would you like me to?
in terms of like where business is going or just like news in general.
Yeah, so I think we were talking about the news in general related to AI. So I'd seen that Salesforce, Mark Benioff had mentioned that AI now handles 30 to 50% of Salesforce internal work. So I'd love to get your take on that.
I think yeah, I just think more I'm seeing out across the board now with every company, and this is one of the things that I've been talking a lot about with my content is I think if you're in an enterprise company right now, you have to be anticipating that if you are not seen as someone who is using AI or understands AI, and really I don't even know what the qualification. I think what I would want to understand is like from Salesforce's point of view, from Microsoft, who I also know let go of a bunch of people this week. How are they deciding and what are the qualifications for people they keep and for
Yeah,
people they lay off? And
yeah.
like, but my thought is, I just think you have to almost anticipate now if you're at an enterprise company, you're
Hmm.
at risk of, losing your job because everyone's going through it's like digital transformation 2.0 almost, it feels like.
Yeah. I think that it goes back to what we were talking about before, right? Adaptability is a key. So
Yeah.
if you're stuck in maybe a silo, it might be a little bit more challenging. But if you've got transferable skills, whether that's around project management, data, even sales or production, being proactive and showing how you could leverage this in the AI space, I think is absolutely key. But I think we talk to recruiters, and the recruiters should be the ones that are navigating this liquidity in the market because there's movement. And so when there's layoffs, like the jobs report just come out recently, and I was actually listening to it on the way in, and we could probably pull up those numbers. Maybe you could pull up the today's job report numbers, but I don't think that there was a huge dip in the overall arching jobs, right? I think there was actually an increase in 300,000 odd plus new vacancies and positions. Maybe you can pull those numbers, Joel.
Yeah, they said they added 147,000 jobs in
Okay.
June, which was more than the 110,000 they expected. But only half of those jobs essentially were in the private sector.
Right.
And then they also said that the labor force participation rate, so those are people who aren't even included in that number, that has fallen at 62%, which is the lowest in 3 years. So there are also now we're seeing signs of people who've just been unemployed for a long time that are going, hey, I'm not even entering, like I haven't even applied to a job. I think it's 6 weeks you have to apply to a job. So better job numbers than they anticipated for for sure, which I think then people are thinking with the interest rates, like they're not going to bring the interest rates down, which has been a big complaint for the last few months and stuff. But
Yeah,
um, I think what I think about when I just with the job market in general is one of the struggles I've seen from people hitting the job market, if particularly if they get if they lose a job at Salesforce, for example, you just see it these large companies. There's so many cross-functional teams. There's so many analogous projects people are working on where it's really hard to say for me to say to a candidate, "What have you done the last 3 to 4 years
sure,
in that role?"
sure. Well,
It's
that's what
hard
we
for
were
them to
talking
answer the
about.
question.
That's what we were talking about earlier today, right? Like, which is we're moving to a value-based economy.
Yeah,
And so I think the demonstration of value when you're going through the door,
yeah,
and then if you think that you may exit the door, what are you going to bring to the next space? And we're actually even seeing that as an evolution in the pricing models, more
yeah,
outcomes as a service, right? Versus subscription. Like people aren't just buying and sitting on things anymore. They want to know how can this help me? And I think if you're buying labor in this regard or an AI agent, the question is what is the output going to be that you're going to deliver? So as recruiters, I think part of what you can do is as you're starting to prep the candidates or you're thinking about companies that you want to work with, displaying that value. It used to be good enough to have like a write up, just say, hey, this person's great. I know them, I know the kids and blah, 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 all this stuff, right? As a
yeah,
referral. Now it's going to be like, what are the numbers? What could they hit? And what could they do for the organization to help them with their AI transformation?
yeah.
So AI reinvention, I think, is the key.
I love that. It also said in that article too, just or in that Salesforce article, it said employees are shifting towards higher value tasks. So I
Yeah,
think part of this is looking at, hey, at your company, in your role, what are the higher value tasks? And higher value just means what are the things that you're doing that are adding the most value at the time you have. So kind of going back to that example of looking at your own schedule and going, all right, this task isn't actually adding much value. I'm not making any money, but these other tasks, that's sales, for example, like prospecting isn't as valuable as closing a deal or having that second meeting. So like how do I spend less time prospecting, more time on those second, third meetings, which are closing business.
right.
And so I try to identify that in your own role, I guess.
Yeah, you want to spend time in the areas that the AIs are not proficient in today. And that goes back to being personable, leveraging EQ, empathy, having deeper discussions around complex deals,
Yeah.
and being someone that they can rely on and trust. So I think anything that's admin, as you know, like our mission is zero admin, right? Like that is our mission. Anything that's administrative, you want to stay away from. And I think to your point, everything that is value based, adding value with what you're selling. So if you're a recruiter and you're trying to sell candidates into a role, are you adding value? If you're in an organization and you're supporting a company, where is your value? If you're a new
Yeah.
candidate and you're trying to get a new job, when you're speaking to somebody in an interview, really demonstrating where's the value and also how you're AI powered.
Love that. And the last thing on that article, because I know I want to move on to this headhunting as well. They said it's a billion AI agents in deployment by the end of the year. A billion. Does that surprise you? I mean, that seems like a massive number to me, but deploying 1 billion AI agents by year end, that's their aim.
Yeah, look, it's not that hard to redeploy an agent because all you do is you press the duplicate button. Like that is what happens. Now, if you said you got 1 billion use cases, that's a different statement. I think that these numbers are put out so we talk about them, but the reality of it is most businesses have two core functions, and it's to get customers and it's to keep them happy.
Yeah,
So everything in between are processes that could be optimized or leveraged, right? If you have a billion AI agents, the question is what are they all going to be doing? I do think it depends on what the definition of the agent is. And I have a definition which is OTT. So you have an objective, tasks and tools. So yeah, maybe there are a billion agents, but I'm not sure exactly what that solves, right? Like, so let's take it. I like to think about it in Lego blocks. I don't know that there are a billion different styles of Lego. But I know that there are various shapes. Let's say you could probably find out what that number is, right? While we're talking, and but the combinations are way more than a billion, right? Like the amount of combinations you could make with Lego. So you only need a good amount of core foundational Legos to then make a combination of two or three or four or five different things in a multiple amount of time. So what's that number, Joe? Did you search it?
Well, okay, so I mean, you'll have to excuse my prompt engineering here, my context engineering. I just said, how many Lego shapes are there? So I don't even know how good of a prompt that is, but it said it's difficult to pinpoint the exact number, but there's 78,930, looks
Okay.
like.
Okay, and then ask how many combinations could be made with that. So out of the 78,000, how many combinations could you make? It's going to be a number that'd be hard to read, I imagine.
Yeah, it's the 915 million. 100, it was like 103,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a big
Right. So
number.
so so there's probably
Almost a
78,
billion.
almost a billion. So let's say that's it, 78,000. So if you get to 80,000 Legos, probably 80,000 different types of use cases could be a billion agents.
Yeah, makes sense.
Right. All right. So anything else that you wanted to cover, Joel?
Yeah, what about this? I mean, we're recruiting in AI, so we've got to talk about some recruiting that happened in AI. With this poaching that it seemed like went viral overnight with Mark Zuckerberg poaching three researchers from OpenAI with like $100 million compensation offers. So who's the lucky recruiter that got those deals?
Yeah, I was
Sounds
thinking
like
about
Mark
it.
Zuckerberg was just doing it himself.
Yeah, I think he was
Corn fur.
do yeah, he was doing the searches. It's probably retained as well, right? Um, yeah, look, what's your
He
opinion
used
on
an
those?
agent to just do it. He just used
He
an
did.
agent. Yeah.
We he actually used our agent. And that's the rumor I heard. That's a
Uh,
rumor. What do you think are those types of salary packages? 100 million.
I mean, it just I can't even comprehend that in my mind, to be honest with you. I'm just like, it just seems at at a point, it's just like it doesn't really matter, or it's like, is that just stock, or is that just like you said, like another big number for like a headline, and
Sure.
um, I don't know. It's just funny when that stuff hits the news because I'm like, who's pushing that? Like, did Mark Zuckerberg go, hey, this would be great news, or like someone pick up on it? Like, how do they even find out that? Um, but yeah, I mean, obviously means that there's a lot of money in AI if you know what you're doing, if you're one of these researchers.
Yeah. I think that if you take the analogy of like a sports star, we've seen these types of contracts before, 100 million
Yeah,
plus contracts, right?
yeah, totally.
And is there more at stake from a societal standpoint than a particular sports game? Some teams and fans would argue, no, there isn't, and they could be right. But I think that some of these bets, to your point, like the makeup of the comp, the period of time, right? Like if you say it's over 3 years, um, then you kind of get into like 30 mil. If you say that 50, like half of that is stock, right? And then it's like, well, that's what a founder may make if they create a successful company over a 3, 4 year period of time. So I don't know what the deal structure is, but to your point, I agree. There's obviously a lot of money flooding into it, and there apparently are a few key people. I do think that the next phase, and you've seen this investment. So the other thing from OpenAI is they had invested in or done an acqui-hire, if you like, for Johnny Ive's company. And Johnny Ive was, for many of you who all probably know, but Johnny Ive was instrumental in designing the Apple products, including the iPhone and a few others, and he was Steve Jobs' partner in crime. But they done the acqui-hire, and apparently there were under 20 people there, and they, with stock all in, it was $5.6 billion.
Wow.
So if you're doing that, then the question is like, okay, what do I think the growth could be, or how big do I think the opportunity is? So there's a lot of numbers being banded about. I do think that part of this challenge is it should kind of get a bit more evenly spread as time goes on, because there are also a lot of really great people that could do with some cash, right? So like, how do you then start to redistribute? And I think that's going to be one of the big challenges with AI, to make sure that all the power is not concentrated.
Well, I've seen a lot of these investments that are announced, and they're always, it seems like when it's these AI companies or then there's a big name behind it, it's like a round of like billions, where
Yeah,
it's like I would see 300 million in the past and think, oh, that's a pretty large,
sure.
Series E. That seems large, but now it's like, it's just, I think this one's at 14 billion in scale AI. It just seems that's just like such a massive number for investment into something. So where's that
Well,
money going? What do
yeah.
they use it for?
Well, there's two different things, because you said in Scale AI 14 billion. That was an acquisition though, right? So it didn't go into Scale Up AI. Was
Got it.
that
Okay.
right? Okay, so it didn't go into Scale AI. The founder got paid, and so did their investors. If you talk about investment, what typically happens is a big proportion of that money actually goes to hiring, and it goes to salaries, and that's the overhead. What we're starting to see a shift in is some of that proportion, as we saw with the numbers earlier, is going into compute power and cloud infrastructure and data storage. And then it goes into kind of storage in the environment. Now, so there's two different things, like who's getting paid at the end, or where is the money flowing? And so if you can figure out where the money flows as a recruiter, then you can figure out like where you can add value, both on an agency standpoint and or internally. Like, where is the money flowing to?
It sounds like right now the money's flowing to data centers.
Yeah, look, data centers are going to be key. Energy is another big part of that. So
Yeah.
you're looking at the downstream part of the supply chain. And going back to what we were talking about earlier, right? A lot of this is spending that little bit of extra time and doing a bit of critical thinking and saying, okay, well, what are the first order effects? What are the principles that are driving this particular decision? And all the great recruiters do that already. They do that with their hiring managers. Like, why are you hiring? What initiative are you trying to get done? What's the outcome that you're trying to achieve? And once you break it down, you get to the answers. So do the same when you're with the AIs as well. But I think that we're at time now, right, Joel?
We're at time. Um, been a really good episode. Where can people find out more too about the newsletters, the community? Where's the best place for people to go?
So we have a four-letter domain, and it's eq.app. So it's four letters, one period, eq.app. That's where you can find the majority of our stuff. There's links to everything, links to community, links to some of our AI solutions that you can test out, links to get connected with me and or the team. If you're in recruiting or you're looking at BD, reach out. Love to hear from you. Love to see how we can help you. And how
And
about you, Joel?
how many members are in the community?
We're still at the 20,000 mark. I was actually looking, we were
Amazing.
talking about this earlier, right? Like, we're getting a consistent open rate. We haven't grown it significantly, but those that are there, they're pretty loyal, coming back. We're having good conversations.
Love it.
So yeah, it's been interesting. How about you, Joel? Where's the place for everyone to find you?
I would say LinkedIn, and then I have a podcast as well. Recruiting is no joke. You can check in to see, and then each week we do the AI and recruiting podcast. So I would also say if you've got questions on this show, if you've got ideas around topics, get a hold of either of us. Send us a connection request. Just say, hey, heard you on the AI and recruiting show, and it's been a pleasure. It's been great seeing you as well, and just chatting and catching up as well. So. Appreciate everybody out there, especially if you made it this far in the show. Well done. You're a legend, and we appreciate you.
Cheers, everyone.
If you got value from today's episode, share it with someone in your network, your team, your boss, or that recruiter still stuck in 2015. Be sure to follow the show so you never miss what's next in hiring and AI. Until next time.